There's been an avalanche of negative headlines after Ronny Jackson pulled the plug on his nomination to run the sprawling VA bureaucracy. This after a Senate committee started leaking allegations against him to the press, and less than 48 hours after the president suggested he might want to bow out.
But I told Admiral Jackson just a little while ago, I said, what do you need this for? This is a vicious group of people that malign, and they do. I don't want to put a man through a process like this. It's too ugly and too disgusting. I wouldn't do it. What does he need it for? To be abused by a bunch of politicians that aren't thinking nicely about our country?
Well, the White House physician decided he didn't need it, and after he withdrew, the president said this on Fox.
These are all false accusations that were made. These are false. They're trying to destroy a man.
Joining us now to analyze the coverage, Mollie Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist and a Fox News contributor. Juan Williams, co-host of The Five. And Shelby Holliday, senior video reporter at The Wall Street Journal. Mollie, the Washington Post headline after this: cabinet chaos engulfs Trump. So the larger media narrative here is that Donald Trump appoints people impulsively, they aren't adequately vetted, and this creates problems for the administration.
And it's not that that narrative is completely false. Obviously, there is chaos. We don't have a cabinet secretary at the Veterans Administration, and this is a very important cabinet. This is a very important agency that serves the health of all of our veterans. That's an important part of the story, how he's appointing people and how it's not working well, or how he's nominating people. At the same time, I think that larger narrative misses the point, which is that a lot of Americans voted for Trump precisely because he does things differently than the way they've been done in Washington, and that they're sick of business as usual in Washington, and they are looking for different ways to approach such issues as how veterans' health is taken care of.
So shaking things up has both positive and negative effects. Now, Juan, even before these allegations against Ronny Jackson surfaced, the media take was, how could he be named to run the VA, no management experience, if Trump liked him because he praised his health? And then when these allegations surfaced, I mean, the media really pounced.
Well, I'm not sure I would say the media pounced, Howard, because remember, initially, it was simply the basis of the reports to the Senate saying that there were concerns over reports to the senators, and it was sort of up in the air. What are these allegations? Then, subsequently, the reporting comes out based on leaks, if you will, coming out of the Senate, that military people had gone to Senator Tester, and then the allegations, the flood started.
Right. Some of that is fair game, but then it turns out that some of these allegations about wrecking a car or being so drunk that he couldn't be roused are not true, or there's no evidence of that.
No, what we know is that the White House has said that subsequent...
The Secret Service has also said...
No, the Secret Service came back on the idea that he was banging on a door for a woman and could have waken her.
Everywhere.
Right. But guess what? We don't know. What we know is that principally the White House said these reports of drunken behavior, handing out pills like a candy man, they say it's not true. But wouldn't it have been better if he had been vetted earlier and they could have said right from the start, not true?
I think we can agree on that point. But Shelby, now there were a whole bunch of nominees that were put up who had to withdraw, including one for Secretary of Labor, for Army Secretary, for Navy Secretary. But there is a New York Times story that says, for many, life on Trump team ends in a crash. And this is also part of this narrative that, you know, for those of you who left the White House under a cloud or whatever, that working for the president isn't good for your reputation. It's not that it's not true in every case, but is that overstated in your view?
I don't think it's overstated, and I'm glad you're asking, because the big question now is, does Ronny Jackson stay on as White House doctor? It looks like he will, but there are still questions about
whether or not... There's a much larger question about working for this administration.
There is, and a lot of people feel that when they leave, they have been burned. Their reputation has been tarnished. Whether they have been sort of stabbed in the back and hung out to dry,
stabbed in the front,
or they left on their own accord because of some scandal or something that they disagreed with in the administration. So it's a tough place to work, but the White House is always a tough place to work. I would say there are still questions about this doctor. Does he hand out pills like candy? Is he drinking on the job? You would never want a doctor like that around the President of the United States.
This is actually kind of the whole problem here. Senator Jon Tester went out with anonymous allegations that in some cases have been actually disputed, in no cases have been verified, and yet the media are talking about them on air, acting like it's no concern to destroy a man's reputation. Senator Jon Tester is probably going going to face a lot of tough questions for what he did from his Montana constituents. But he couldn't have done it without the media just carrying that for him.
So why
journalistic
did the
norms are being
the president give him an off-ramp instead of
journalistic norms are being thrown out the window. You do not say this could be true and that could be true. Anything could be true.
If
That's
the
not the
senator
norm.
has a
You make sure
report-
something is true. A report based on anonymous sources. This is why it's important
But the senator is who
to
came
verify
forward with those details.
Yes,
the
and
senator came
he
forward
absolutely
with those
should be
details.
held accountable because I think some credence was given to him in the same way credence was given to Harry Reid when he made up information about Mitt Romney's tax returns. That doesn't mean that journalists should just do this, though.
I do have to say there have been instances of Republicans on committees leaking allegations as part of their investigation. It's not unique. It's not solely the province of Democrats. The president, of course, now calling for Tester to resign and using words like very dishonest and sick. But the thing about Tester, who's the ranking Democrat on that committee, the Republican chairman, Johnny Isakson, he's the one who held up the hearing, and he says he has no problem with what Tester did. So there's not unanimity of opinion on this in the political world.
Not at all. And in fact, I think there's a lot of concern about the issue you raised at the very start of the show, qualifications. Does he have the management experience to run the second largest bureaucracy in Washington?
But that's now moot. What about Mali's point that the media were too willing and perhaps eager to run with allegations, many of which were unconfirmed, that kind of ruined this guy's reputation?
I don't think for me, that's not the issue, because you
Why is
had
that
it
not the
coming
issue?
from John Tester. You have it coming from an authoritative source.
Would you say the same thing if it was coming from Devin Nunes? Well, that's
Yes.
okay.
Are you kidding? Devin Nunes has been all over the papers, and in some cases later had to recuse himself.
But
because
you're all right with the press running with this?
Yeah, because
No
guess
problem.
what? Somebody put their face and name, who was an elected American official, in this case a U.S. senator, put his name to it and said, here's what is coming.
Initially, I think some of this was just leaked, and then he went public. I want to turn to, so that we touch on this, this extraordinary spectacle of the leaders of North and South Korea meeting and talking about ending the war between them and perhaps moving forward with this denuclearization process, if that is true. Now, Donald Trump, as you know, Molly, battered by the media for months for taunting Little Rocket Man and all of that. Do you think the press is now giving the president at least some credit, with the caveats that we don't know what's going to happen, for the apparent progress on the Korean Peninsula?
Yeah, they're giving some credit. I'm not sure if it's as much as should be. I saw the Daily Beast editor said, let's be honest, if Obama were accomplishing this, we'd be praising him. And I saw that CNN asked the foreign minister of South Korea, how is this happening so quickly? And she said, well, obviously all credit goes to Trump. And then to their credit, they wrote that story up based on what she said. But given that we were, and we talked about it on this show, talking about how much the media said that Donald Trump was bringing us to the brink of nuclear war a few months ago with his rhetoric,
yeah.
I think it's important to give that same level of coverage about what has apparently turned out to be a pretty successful approach this far. We have a lot that we don't know.
Very fair assessment. Now, what everyone's buzzing about here in D.C. is last night's White House Correspondents' Dinner. The president went to Washington, Michigan, talked to a rally, and as you might expect, he had some unfavorable things to say about the press. Take a look.
They don't have sources. The sources don't exist in many cases. I could be up there tonight smiling like I love where they're hitting you shot after shot. These people, they hate your guts.
All right, so he had a better time, but Yvonne, the media world is just filled with criticism now for comedian Michelle Wolf, who was cursing F-bombs on live television, personally cruel, in my view at least, to people like Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Kellyanne Conway, who were there. You were at the dinner. I saw you. What's your take?
I thought that the level of sort of acerbic commentary directed at Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who was sufficiently dignified to allow herself to be there. The president's not there.
Sit on the dais.
She is sitting there as a representative of that administration, and I thought she honored us as journalists with her presence, given the difficulty of the relationship, which should be adversarial, but it's a difficult relationship. And she decided to make herself available and present, and I think it was rude, just as a human being, if I started speaking about Howard Kurtz in that way. I don't think it's appropriate.
You can say whatever you want about me, but rude is an understatement. And the president tweeting, everyone's saying it was a big, boring bust and the so-called comedian bombed. He wants Greg Gutfeld to be the comedian next year. I saw you there as well. What's your take on? I mean, this came now, I think, to define what otherwise would have been a nice, a bunch of awards for journalists kind of thing. This came to define the White House Correspondents Association.
I thought that exact same thing when I was looking at Twitter this morning. She took it too far. Some of her attacks, especially with Sarah Huckabee Sanders, were very distasteful, made everybody uncomfortable. Journalists are among those who are most critical of this stand-up routine, if we want to call it that. But there were some really great parts of the dinner. Students are being honored. There are scholarships. I thought Margaret Talev gave a really great speech about them meeting the president and how President Trump received these journalists warmly. Those things are all overshadowed by some crude jokes that didn't need to be involved.
Overshadowed, obliterated.
Obliterated, yes.
I truly mean no offense, but I feel about the White House Correspondents' Dinner the way that most journalists feel about people like me, which is utter disdain. I thought that comedian's performance was not just rude, it was unfunny, which is the criminal issue, and also it's just such uneven comedy. Attacks on one group of people and just very light attacks on the media. If the White House Correspondents' Dinner wants to redeem its reputation, it needs to start being more heavy-hitting against itself.
Well, the president could also show up and slam the press.
That president
That would be
did
welcome.
turn down the invitation.